I was very much looking forward to going to a fancy dinner for my birthday. However, what awaited me was a dinner that was nothing short of torture. To my surprise, my husband and his parents, who went to dinner with me, completely ignored me. Moreover, they even went so far as to snatch my food, which was a form of harassment. Why did I receive such treatment? And how did I respond to this harassment? I was fully ignored at a birthday dinner after I found out why and decided to get a divorce. I just celebrated my 30th birthday recently, and I have now become a divorcee. Goodbye 20s, and welcome 30s. I am still young. Being a divorcee is okay. Divorce is common nowadays, but I want to know why. Really, there are 1,000 reasons for divorce. I thought being in my 30s, I would feel more mature. I thought I would be more composed and alluring. When I see wonderful actresses in their 30s, I think, I want to be like them. I was longing for it, but I'm still far from reaching that state. I still get emotionally shaken by little things. Even during this divorce, my emotions exploded. Can I talk a bit about my divorce drama? I want you to hear about my ex-husband and his outrageous family. I got married to a man 1 year older when I was 28. I met my husband at a group dating event. Since my husband and I were from the same hometown, we rented an apartment near his parents' house to start our newlywed life. Since my husband was the oldest son, it was suggested that we live with his parents after we got married. However, I didn't want to live together from the start, so I talked to my husband and we declined. As a compromise, we decided to live near his parents' house. We had to have a meal at his parents' house once a month, or invite his parents at our home. Those were the rules, or rather agreements, imposed on us. Well, my opinion was also considered. I thought that was fine, so I accepted it, suggesting living together from the start. Is this normal? Do his parents have some kind of family business they want to help with? Or do his parents need care? His parents' house doesn't have a family business and both his parents are healthy. They seem to shower my husband with affection. Even though he's the oldest, he's treated like the youngest and receives more attention than his 2 older sisters. His parents probably wanted their beloved youngest son to stay close. My husband himself also wanted to be near his parents. By the way, both of his older sisters are already married, and one of them lives with her husband's family. Since one of his sisters lives with her husband's family, his parents might have yearned for the same. But respecting my wishes, we didn't live together and started our married life. Regarding the monthly meal at his parents' house, well, I felt a bit left out. And when his parents visited our apartment, "Oh, there's instant ramen. Samantha, are you feeding my son only instant ramen?" She would find things to nitpick about and make snide remarks. By the way, instant ramen is my husband's favorite, and he bought it himself as a late-night snack. This time, my husband explained it. It was resolved. I felt slightly bullied as a daughter-in-law, but it was only once a month, so I could endure it. It was quite unpleasant bullying, though. Samantha, you must be mentally strong. Doesn't it seem like your husband is protecting you? Yes, I felt bad sometimes, but I tried not to let it bother me. Because, as you might guess, my husband was protecting me and listening to my opinions at that time. And I loved my husband very much. I thought it was necessary to endure some things if I could be with him. No, I was able to endure it because of my husband. But just 1 year after we got married, my husband stopped being on my side. He used to visit his parents' house often, but also came to my parents' house frequently. However, a year after we got married, my mother fell ill and was in and out of the hospital, and his behavior started to change. He began to avoid my parents' house, especially when it came to visiting my mother in the hospital. He made various excuses and never came. Furthermore, he started to complain about me visiting my mother or checking on her after she was discharged. He began to find faults with these actions as well. I see. There are people like that. They are utterly cold to those who are weak. Yes, there are. They received so much care themselves. As soon as that person weakens, they abandon them. They are heartless. Exactly. When my mother was healthy and hosting us, he would happily go to my parents' house and enjoy her home cooking. But as soon as my mother became weak, this happened. Now, I'm the one taking care of her. I didn't expect him to provide full care, but it was sad how he treated her like a burden. But I decided to accept it, because she's my mother. I can take care of her. So after that, my husband...
Are you going to check on your mother again? Aren't you leaving the house too often?
And...
Why do you have to drive to the hospital too? You should leave it to your father.
Even though he says such things, I brushed them off and continued to visit my mother. But one day, my husband finally lost it with me. It was the day of the monthly dinner at his parents' house. I received a call that my mother had been rushed to the hospital, so for the first time, I missed the dinner. My husband responded,
You don't need to go because your dad is there. Today's the day I visit my parents' house.
I was told this over and over, but I was so worried about my mother's sudden deterioration. I ignored my husband's protests and headed to the hospital. Of course, I apologized to my husband many times and even contacted my in-laws to apologize. Yet when I returned home late that night, my husband was waiting for me and said,
Listen, don't ever do something like this again. Samantha, you married into my family. It's outrageous to prioritize your own family. Understand your position properly.
He yelled at me like that. I did stand my ground against this, of course. It's true, I shouldn't have broken the promise, but my mother was rushed to the hospital. It was an emergency. You can't leisurely have a meal at a time like that. Don't you rush to your own family's emergencies too?
In the end, Samantha, your own parents are the most important to you. You don't care about my relationship with my parents.
I'm not saying such things, so why are you like this? I do value my relationship with your parents, but right now my mother is going through a tough time. Please understand that. I pleaded desperately for understanding like this, but my husband's anger didn't subside. After that, things between us became strained. We hardly talked at all. By the way, my mother was rushed to the hospital, but there were no complications, so she stayed there for a while. But my mother's condition clearly worsened, and I was worried sick the whole time. So even though things were like this with my husband, I kept going to the hospital for my mother. Of course, my father was doing his best to support my mother, but he had work, and, well, he's a man after all. He definitely has some unreliable aspects, so I needed to support him. Whenever I returned late due to hospital visits, my husband was clearly in a bad mood, glaring at me. But I didn't care about such things. If he couldn't understand about my mother's situation, I was okay with divorcing. I had already reached that point. I was prepared for whatever would happen. There are people who mistakenly think their wife is their possession. Since we're married, it's important to care about each other's parents. I'm a filial daughter. Meanwhile, my husband lacks empathy. That's right, I did hesitate about living with my in-laws, but I was willing to support them if something happened. Even though I endured various snide remarks and tried hard to make things work. My husband should have seen that and helped me. I felt really sad, wondering why he couldn't value my parents. I never thought things would get this tense over something like this. But maybe divorce is the only option now. During the days when I was struggling with these thoughts, one day my husband said,
This time's dinner will be a luxurious one at a restaurant. It's me, my parents, and you, the four of us. Samantha, it's your 30th birthday, right? Let's treat ourselves occasionally, all together.
He said that to me. It made me happy because it was the first time in a while he invited me in such a cheerful voice. I thought he was creating a chance for reconciliation. But this turned out to be a trap to belittle me. My husband and my in-laws conspired to teach me a lesson. On my birthday, when I went to the restaurant with my husband, we were led to a private room that had been reserved, where my in-laws were waiting. They acknowledged us, smilingly raised their hands, and greeted my husband by name. My in-laws called out only my husband's name, not mine. Apparently, this was the beginning of their battle strategy, but at that time, I didn't notice anything. Because even when we dined at my in-laws' house before, they generally directed their conversations towards my husband. I was used to being treated as an outsider to some extent, so not being called by name was nothing new to me. but their attitude from this point onward was particularly harsh. As we sat down to start the meal, I thanked my in-laws for making the restaurant reservation. "Thank you for making such a nice reservation for my birthday. I'm really happy to be able to dine at this wonderful restaurant. I'm looking forward to the food." I thanked my in-laws for their hospitality, but they did not respond at all. My husband also showed the same lack of a response. And then the three of them started a completely different conversation. I naturally realized I was being ignored. It made me feel incredibly small. I was left wondering why this was happening and froze. And then something even worse happened. After that, appetizers and soups for 4 people were brought to our table, but to my surprise, my husband quickly took the food that was brought in front of me and started sharing it with my in-laws. The 3 of them started devouring my food. Naturally, I spoke up. "Huh? What are you doing? That's my dish." "Huh? Are you eating it? Why are you eating my portion?" I looked at my husband and in-laws as I said this, but my husband and parents-in-law completely ignored my words.
"This is delicious, isn't it? Absolutely amazing."
"Indeed, this restaurant lives up to its high-class reputation." They carried on with such a cheerful conversation, enjoying themselves, and swiftly finished my dish. I was left puzzled, not understanding the situation, and for a moment, I just stared at the scene in disbelief. What was that? Ignoring me and even taking away my food like that? I wonder if the waitress was also surprised by all of this. Could it be because I didn't attend the family meal at my in-laws? Is this some kind of punishment or something like that? Coming to a restaurant under the pretext of my birthday and then taking my food away? Unbelievable, right? I was so confused. I was kind of in a daze. But at that moment, I made eye contact with a nearby waitress. And then, that waitress discreetly signaled me over, trying not to be noticed by my husband and the others. The waitress had a look on her face like she wanted to say something. "So I'm going to go to the bathroom for a minute." I stood up coughing and quickly hurried to the waitress. When I left the table, my husband and the others were smirking maliciously. They seemed to be enjoying themselves by being mean to me. That's how it looked. Afterwards, I managed to hear what the waitress had to say. And that's when I heard the shocking truth. I immediately felt things were going to be bad if they continued like this. What? What did the waitress know? I want to know. Even in the current state, I think this family is already problematic enough. Samantha, I think your only choice is to run away. It seems the waitress had heard about the in-laws' arrival beforehand, and she told me about it, and it was really scary. First of all, everyone ignoring me. It turns out it was because I missed the last dinner party. It seems that was the reason. It's unbelievable that despite being the wife, she prioritizes her own parents. I won't say a word until she kneels down and apologizes. That's what they were saying, or something like that. And furthermore, we won't let her eat anything until she kneels down and apologizes. After all, a wife should be satisfied with leftovers. So let's handle the wife's portion of the meal ourselves. We'll just bless her with what we can't finish.
Exactly. She's the wife, so that should be enough. Or perhaps we should have her eat while kneeling on the floor.
Well, that's right. That's fine too. Since she broke her promise, she needs to do something like that.
To show some sincerity, we should ask her to pay for this later.
Of course, that's only natural.
Well, if we do this much, she should learn her lesson. So what are we going to do? Are we going to force through with the cohabitation?
Let's do it. It's already arranged, so it's fine. I'll make her move without any objections. And once she's living with us, I won't let her do as she pleases. I won't even allow her to go back to her parents' house without permission. It seems like that conversation was taking place. It's already too scary. Am I going to be forced to eat this family's leftovers from now on and live under this family's control? And this was the true nature of this family? The thought of it really sent shivers down my spine. Wow, this is scary. Things like kneeling and apologizing, making me eat leftovers. How much punishment are they planning to give? Samantha, seriously, run away. These people are dangerous. If they catch you, Samantha, your life will be in ruins. Of course I tried to escape. I ran thinking I should divorce immediately. But you know what? Now that I've finally understood their dirty intentions, and I decided to stay my hand. But even if I divorce now, it won't hurt them in the current situation. Rather, if I selfishly divorce, they might spread rumors that I neglected my in-laws and divorced for that reason. So I've decided to go along with their scheme and take revenge. So I managed to hold back tears and returned to my seat. Hey everyone, are y'all mad at me? So you're not going to speak to me? I said this in a very weak voice. I decided to approach them with a humble attitude, and then everyone opened their mouths as if it were their chance. Of course, you broke your promise. And yet, there hasn't been a proper apology. I'm sorry about that day, but I think I apologized properly over the phone and explained the circumstances. Huh? You think we'll forgive you with just a phone apology? I want to see more sincerity from you. What kind of sincerity are you talking about?
Yeah, well, should we make you kneel down? But I won't forgive you unless it's a heartfelt kneel.
If we feel your sincerity, we'll share some food with you. Well, you'll be eating the food we left behind, though. Understood. It's a heartfelt kneel, right? I'm sorry. I kneeled down on the spot in front of my husband and in-laws. And then the three of them grinned happily and chuckled.
Huh? Isn't that still too casual? I don't feel much sincerity.
Show more sincere feelings of apology. Apologize to us from the bottom of your heart.
That's right, it's not enough yet. Can you live with not being able to eat this food?
They urged me further. They really were like demons in every way. That's why I decided to be bold. To punish these demons, I decided to do my best. I opened the door of the private room with a bang, and with my back to the large seating area where others were eating, I started speaking. I sincerely apologized for what happened the other day. I deeply regret it. I really wanted to rush over because I was worried about my mother. But as a daughter-in-law, I wasn't allowed to do that, right? I should have prioritized the meal at my in-law's house over my mother, who was urgently rushed to the emergency room. I said loudly and then deeply kneeled down on the spot. The guests in the dining area were shocked. My husband and in-laws were also drunk. I felt sorry for the other customers and was truly embarrassed, but I continued to apologize deeply. Do you think this constitutes a sincere apology? Will you forgive me now? Will I be allowed to have a meal like this? I continued loudly. Of course, I continued to kneel down. After that, there were murmurs from other customers. Huh? What's this? Are they bullying you by any chance? How terrible are these people to make you kneel and apologize like this?
It seems like she won't even be allowed to eat. Isn't that abuse? Unbelievable.
Voices like these were heard. My husband and in-laws had flushed faces. Seems like she's out for some serious revenge. Acting tough to counter those with dangerous thoughts. A humiliation strategy. Surely it would be a good revenge. But were things okay afterward? I only had a little time to think, so this was the best I could do at the moment. I'm really grateful to the waitress who guided me. But seriously, making me bow deeply was unexpected. I didn't doubt the waitress, but those people were truly like demons, so it chilled me to the bone. And then I caused such a scene. Of course, there was another twist. With his face flushed red and in a panic, my husband turned to the other customers and...
I'm sorry, my wife is a bit tipsy. Did you drink too much? Hey now, let's get back to our seats.
He laughs and tries to smooth things over, leading me back into the private room. Then, inside there...
What were you thinking, doing something like that? You're acting like we're the bad guys here.
He was furious, so they were aware of how awful they were, huh? And of course, my in-laws were furious too. What a shameless wife! I guess I have no choice but to toughen you up from scratch.
That's right. Let's just take her back home as it is. Listen, from now on you will live with us, and you will learn what it means to be a wife. Of course, you won't be going out freely anymore.
But what about my mom at the hospital? It's obvious. After all, you're her daughter-in-law, so whatever happens to your own mother doesn't concern us at all. Honestly, leaving home just because your mother was urgently hospitalized? Your parents really didn't teach you anything proper, did they? When she said those words, it hit me hard. I finally stopped pretending and spoke up. That's it, I'm done. There's nothing more to discuss. I'm getting a divorce. I'm done being your daughter-in-law. Huh? What are you talking about? I won't allow a divorce. You're our daughter-in-law, so from now on, you'll work hard here with us.
That's right. Divorce is out of the question. I haven't cheated and I haven't done anything wrong.
It's fine. I've been recording this conversation since earlier, and the waitress there has also been recording a video. You all ganged up on me, hurling insults, forcing me to kneel down too. I think this is enough reason for divorce. And go Samantha! Did you gather solid evidence? You've really put in effort. But that waitress was amazing. If it weren't for her, you would have been in big trouble, right? Trying to control me, taking away my food, forcing me to live with them. I absolutely wanted to cut ties with such a family, so I'm glad I could gather evidence here. So I took this evidence and ran away from my husband and took refuge in my parents' house. And so I asked the lawyer to start moving towards divorce. The lawyer who saw that evidence, the audio and video, was laughing bitterly at such a terrible family. When I reviewed it later, I heard they were saying things that were just unbelievable. I'm pretty sure any person who comes to marrying into this will run away from it. And I'm really grateful to that waitress. Later, I went to thank her in person. I heard some things about the waitress there. It turns out she was a woman in her 50s. She also suffered greatly from emotional abuse by her terrible husband in the past, which led her to get divorced. Therefore, she absolutely couldn't forgive those remarks. It seemed like she wanted to help me. I thought, what a kind and wonderful person. I wanted to become like that too. What I did was quite impulsive and ended up surprising people who had nothing to do with it. I deeply regretted it later on. I'm truly sorry. As for the outcome of my divorce, my husband and in-laws reluctantly agreed. They kept making meaningless statements like worrying about their reputation and expecting me to take care of them in old age, just because I'm married into their family. Because of this, they were hesitant to agree to the divorce. That's why I tried asking for support. I asked my 2 sisters-in-law to watch the video from that restaurant and help push for the divorce. They cooperated and supported me. They said they would stop talking to my husband and his family if they didn't agree to the divorce, and they also said they wouldn't get to see their grandchildren for the rest of their lives. So, after that meeting, my divorce was successfully finalized. My sisters-in-law were sensible and truly saved me. They seemed terrified by the abnormal behavior of my husband and in-laws after watching that video. It seems they decided to gradually distance themselves. That's how it seems. So I was able to divorce safely. Now I'm back at my parents' home, supporting my mother with my father. Honestly, my mother's life could end at any moment. That's why I'm really glad I could spend more time by her side. And by the way, regarding my husband and in-laws, I actually managed to pull off an unexpected revenge. It turns out that a family from the neighborhood was there when I knelt at the restaurant. Moreover, that family is famously known as the gossip family. In other words, they're skilled at spreading rumors. So word spread very fast that the in-laws were a terrible family. Moreover, rumors have spread among my husband's colleagues, my father-in-law's business associates, and my mother-in-law's social circle, saying that if you get involved with that family, you'll end up kneeling. That's what they're saying. I'm sure this will keep them on their toes for a while. I'm glad I could divorce. Samantha, cherish your time with your sick mother. In marriage, you really need to pay attention to the partner's family. If they're troublesome, it'll eventually show. My 30th birthday turned into quite a day and even became a turning point, but, well, let's think about it positively as a precious memory in the long journey of life. That's the end of my story. Thank you to everyone who listened. Samantha's actions angered her husband and in-laws, who retaliated during her birthday dinner. Moreover, her husband had plans not just for revenge, but to completely ruin Samantha's life. Samantha figured out their real plans and turned their revenge back on them, successfully breaking away from her husband and in-laws. I'm really glad Samantha didn't become a victim of her strange family. Becoming a mother-in-law. While such words exist in marriage, it never means the daughter-in-law should abandon her own family. Marriage is about both partners walking together to become one family. It's impossible to dedicate oneself to only one side.